Afternoon. Welcome to this next tutorial of wire patching. So this is something that was shown to me about from a friend of mine. Tijn is Fine. Tijn is Fine showed me this on a Slack channel of using a mapping to control the skew of your wire patches so that you're able to generate a more smooth transition between your colors, or be able to control the smooth transition between the colors. I was looking for a way to do this because I wanted to be able to, basically control where those colors are being set. So you're closer on one end with the blue or the red, with smaller transitions into blue, or vice versa. So this is how that kind of came to be. I've pretty much taken that idea and I've kind of added some things to kind of give it a little bit more control. But this is the gist of it. So what I have going on here is I have a rectangle. I have a linear over here on the left. I have a linear basically count of 25 instances. And what I'm doing is I'm putting that into a mapped node with a curve in the middle. And I'll explain the curve node in just one second. But what's basically happening is the 1 to 0 value is being remapped to a negative 1.65 to 1.65. And so negative is on the left and the positive is on the right. I'm using a float 2 to change those values so that you get something like this. So that is to basically make it so that you have a negative 1.65 on the left and positive 1.65 on the right. That's done through this mapping. So the reason why this curve is here is because the fact that I want to be able to give it a more control on the actual curve itself, right? So very much like, think of the bell curve that we learned in high school, right? So there's a certain kind of bell curve that's happening here if I change these values here, right? So I have seen in and seen out. So if I do seen in, that's going to be from the left-hand side. So it's now going to be more heavier on the left-hand side, okay? And then seen out, which is the opposite. So now it's more heavier on the right-hand side. So the reason the curve is before the map is because this is a 0 to 1 value when it comes to the linear. I'm remapping it to a 1.65, negative 1.65, to positive 1.65 when I use the map node. So when we're just talking purely from linear to map, that's the 0 to 1 value, but I'm changing those values here in these two floats so that it'll go that each for the 0 is now equates to the left side and the 1 equates to the right side, basically, in the float 2. So the reason why the curve is here and not in between the mapping is because the curve node can only go from 0 to 1. And that is where I was running into issues. I could not figure out why it was that when I had the curve value in between, the values just did not look proper. They didn't look right. And the reason being is because the curve is a 0 to 1 value, which needed to be added beforehand. And that basically fixed the issue, right? So now I have this setup where basically I have this curve that can be skewed with a scene out, for instance. So you'll notice that there's a little bit heavier handed on the right side for spacing, right? There's no spacing in between. And then I also have the option to still skew it if I so choose to. So I can really kind of play with this and dial it in. So if I wanted the skew to be, closer or further away, I can change that skew here, and I can also change it here. I can change some of the values here to kind of change where it starts from, right? So that was the reasoning for this 0.5. So now we're back at scene in, scene out. So you're going to get less spacing on the left and the right. And then the middle, you're going to get more even distribution spacing in between, right? So the middle mark is basically the most maximum space that you're going to receive. And on the ends is no spacing at all. And so that's how you got this kind of look. So the reason why this was important to me was because, again, I wanted to be able to change the shapes, have more granular, option to basically change the color, size, and shape. One thing that I've learned kind of as I'm playing around with this and fiddling with it is that the linear curve, for instance, does not really change the map, or basically whatever your 0 and 1 value is not what you're mapping, which I thought was interesting. I just learned this, that basically the color in and, my two colors that are chosen are the min and max. But then the values that they start with, or the value that I'm using to define that space, is that still that 0 to 1 value. So I still have 25 instances here, and I'm also, again, changing the curve of the quadratic in or quadratic out, okay? If I set this to linear, now I have more balanced, and we'll set this to 0.5. So now it's even distribution. So now I have even distribution between the blue and the red. And so now you can see that plain as day. If I change the linear to scene in, scene out, you'll notice that the color kind of changed here, but the values have not changed. They're still the values between blue and red. Beforehand, what I had happening was I had this color here and this color here, and when I tried to add them to the min and the max, thinking that that was going to fix the problem, there's certain values that I was changing here. You can see there's a darkness there. And the reason why is because the quadratic in is actually changing the actual color values. And the reason being is because this is a float 4. The float 4 is basically being filtered into the map, and then the map is trying to make those numbers right. So to fix this, instead of trying to fiddle with that and try to get that entire mess to work, what I ended up figuring out was I don't have to do any of that. All I have to do is just make sure that my min and my max are the two colors that I so choose, and it will map that for me. I don't have to worry about whether or not this is a float 4 and how that float 4 works. I can actually just change this to a float 1, and it will map it for me. I don't have to worry about that. So that was something that was eye-opening to me. I didn't realize how powerful the map node really was. I'm enthralled by that, and I'm find that very exciting. It's lightning for my brain, if you will. Lots of different things that I could do with that I never knew that were possible. So that's pretty much the gist of it. The nice thing about this setup here is that the linear is still a 0 to 1 value, so I'm not changing colors per se. I'm more changing where the color value starts and ends. That is the part I wanted to change, right? So that's how this curve is in between as a 0 to 1 value, and then it's being remapped between those two colors. And I wanted that value because then if I go, like, for instance, scene in, now it's heavier on the blue versus the red. A thing to note here that I've noticed is that if I set this back to linear, just real quick, I have this red to blue value, but what I've noticed with colors is if you go to the very end, you'll notice that there's this blue space here, and then if I go directly, it's completely red. But if you go to the opposite side, you'll notice that there's a red value there. This is completely 0, so it should go to blue. I think that's probably how it's counting is probably the reason why that's happening. I'm honestly not sure, and I'm sure that there's some guru out there that's going to tell me that how that works. I'm almost positive somebody's going to say to me, well, it's because But in any case, thank you very much for that person. I really appreciate your time. That is very important, and I'd like to know how that works. But in any case, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea as to how this works, and I thought it was exciting and interesting, and I hope you find this interesting like I do. I am very excited to learn more about how Wire works. It's a great program. There's lots of great things here. Thank you very much for watching my little mini tutorial here and this explanation. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, you know what to do. You can send it to my email address. My email address is jacobmesick, M-E-S-I-C-K, @gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you. I'm always interested to see what other people have to talk about with Wire and how it works, and I'd like to hear your input. Send me a line sometime. I appreciate you guys watching this tutorial, and it seems to be resonating with a lot of people. If you have any ideas of the next tutorial, send me a message, and I'll see what I can do. Come up with some information. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.